Ladies and gentlemen tuning in on YouTube, welcome. This is the talk that I've been waiting to do for quite a long time. I was actually supposed to do it a little bit earlier before Capcom Cup groups actually started, but life happened, and so now I'm doing it here. At the time of recording, groups have now ended. We're waiting on the top 16 of Capcom Cup, which is taking place tomorrow. Today is just SFL stuff, so I decided to do this talk today. Today we're going to be talking about the Capcom Pro Tour. A lot of people have offered input on, how the quality is, this and that, but no one has really articulated in a way that makes it painstakingly clear what is actually wrong with the tour this year. And so that's what I'm going to be doing in this video. If you're tuning in on YouTube, go ahead, leave a like, leave a comment, sub to the channel, all that good stuff, .jpeg YouTuber stuff below. I have a bunch of bullet points, so we're just going to start. We're going to split them up into categories. I'm just going to go top to bottom. So let's just jump right in. First thing to talk about when we talk about Capcom Cup, before we talk about Capcom Cup and Capcom Pro Tour, we have to talk about Street Fighter 6, because that is the focus. That is what everything is centered around. So Street Fighter 6 probably had the best launch of any modern fighting game, just straight up. Probably had the best launch. Things actually worked correctly. People were having fun with the game. It had great marketing surrounded on it. They had, even celebrities involved. Feel like even the normies were really interested in what was going on. It has good aesthetic, all that good stuff, right? Really strong launch. And like I said, I think it's probably the strongest fighting game launch there's probably ever been. However, there's a problem with what happened directly after launch. And so that's the first category we're going to be going over here. Street Fighter 6's post-launch has been, in a lot of people's eyes, very underwhelming for a bunch of different reasons. Now, when I list these points, I'm not going to say that I 100% agree or disagree with these points, but these are points that people are making. I just want to make that clear before we go any further. So, first thing, no patch philosophy, right? And so this is a conversation that a lot of people have in fighting games, because I think fighting games are a genre that have a really hard time kind of finding the balance between how often the game should be changed or if it should be left alone for a long period of time. Street Fighter 6 has chosen to go the route of, we're going to do one patch per year, or one patch for the first year at least. And so what that means is from release to now, we've essentially been playing the same game, right? There has been some quality of life updates and whatnot that do actually have impacts on how the game is played, like the light button into buffer drive rush thing. Like they changed that to nerf the power of just sticking out light buttons in neutral and just buffering drive rush behind it all the time, which it makes a big difference, right? But it's not a direct balance change depending on characters. It's pretty much only been small quality of life changes for mechanics. And so to a lot of people, that feels like a mistake. And the reason it feels like a mistake to them is because the way that fighting games have been going, they have been really dialing in on the kind of trendy nature of playing these games. There's a lot of different choices in fighting games nowadays. And it feels like attention spans just get shorter and shorter. And so what happens is that people feel like the game gets stale. Very quickly. Now, this would happen regardless of whether you patch once a year or you patch once a month. People get kind of bored very quickly, or they don't have the attention to actually dig deeper into the game and find new things. And so what it leads to is a lot of complaining on social media, and it creates this dynamic where people feel like, oh my God, this game is so irredeemably broken. I can't believe we have to stick with this for an entire year. When that's not really the case, right? Street Fighter 6, for all intents and purposes, especially for a first patch of a game, pretty balanced, honestly. Yes, it has top tiers. Yes, it has things that are very strong, but generally pretty balanced game, which contributes to why its launch was so good, right? And so it kind of makes people feel trapped, right? Because if you go on Twitter and you're seeing oh my God, JP is so broken. Oh my God, take him out of the game. I can't believe that we're playing the game with this character in the game the way that they are, right? What it leads is to people just getting tired of the game instead of actually playing and enjoying the game. And so that's kind of a negative impact of choosing to just do one patch per year. People feel like it gets stale really quick. And if there are people that have complaints or they have perceptions that this thing in the game is game ruining, they feel trapped. They don't have anywhere to go because they're stuck with it for an entire year. I don't think that the one patch a year thing is necessarily a bad thing on its own. I really don't. But there are trade-offs to whether you patch the game often or you don't patch the game often. So important when we're talking about the launch. Next thing, costume pricing, right? So the costume thing is actually a much bigger deal than it might seem. So we're going to go to this overlay. And so we're going to talk about Costume 3. So Costume 3 did not come out until December, right? It dropped December 1st. The game came out in June, right? So it took them a little bit of time to actually like develop the costumes and whatnot. And I would like to keep in mind that before we talk about Costume 3 itself, we also want to talk about the fact that Costume 2 is kind of hard to obtain in the game, right? I think you have to complete World Tour mode or pay a lot of money one way or the other, which is like not ideal for a lot of people, right? If you're not interested in the the single player content and whatnot, like it just feels kind of awful that you can't get more costumes. And this actually like affected the tournament landscape too, because a lot of tournaments only had costume 1 unlocked because of course TOs don't want to go through like having to do this for every setup, right? Like going through and unlocking the costumes, not like it's just unreasonable to ask, right? And so like a lot of tournaments only have not only the first not only just one costume, but they don't have that many colors unlocked either, right? And so like what it leads to is every tournament kind of looking exactly the same, right? And like that does matter, right? Like that does end up mattering. It's something super little, I think, in the eyes of people, but it does matter, right? Like and so yeah, they released Costume 3 in December and it's expensive, right? And so like them being expensive, I don't think is the problem on its own, but I do think there's an issue with kind of how they went about it. So as you can see, this post says all Street Fighter 6 Costume 3 costs about $100 in total. Now, it didn't have to be this way. Each costume in Street Fighter 6 is, I believe, $6, the equivalent of $6 in their fighter coins or fighter currency or whatever the hell they call their currency. But the problem ends up coming from how you purchase. So it costs, I believe a costume costs 300. 300 fighter coins, right? But you can only buy 250 at a time. 250 fighter coins is $5, right? And so you have to buy 2 packs of the coins in order to afford one costume. You have to spend $10 on a $6 costume, right? Even if you're buying the absolute most that you can at a time, you have to buy 2 packs of $50, which comes out to the 100 that we're talking about. And so I think a lot of this could be remedied by them just letting you directly purchase the costume itself without having to do the alternative currency, or just making it so that they line up, right? The minimum amount that you can buy actually lines directly with how much it costs for a costume, or just put a $1 currency pack in, right? That gives them, so people can do the math themselves if you want them to, right? But the way that they've chosen to do the pricing is kind of predatory for sure. And this is a legitimate complaint. The costumes look great, but I think it really took the wind out of a lot of people's sails when we talk about how much they cost and how annoying it is to obtain them. Okay, so that aside, another issue that they ran into in between the release of the game and Costume 3 coming out was the whole avatar debacle. So Street Fighter 6 is a super huge success, right? In both casual and competitive fan bases. And so those two like sectors of the player base have kind of like lived independently of each other. Like not many people actually like cross over one or the other. Like not many people actually know how the other side lives in that regard, right? The casuals are just playing the game, they're fucking around, they're playing avatar battles, they're doing crazy off the wall shit, minding their own business. The competitors over there grinding ranked, grinding casual, doing whatever, going to tournaments. They don't really pay attention to the other side, right? They kind of exist in the same place, but like, not really paying much attention to each other. However, we talk about the avatar skins, we kind of see some of that crossover where people are starting to look at the other side and they're thinking like, why do they have it better than us and type of stuff. It kind of creates like resentment in a way. And I've kind of noticed this as time has gone on in this game, where the competitive fighting game player base of Street Fighter 6, because it took them so long to get, more costumes and whatnot that they've been asking for a while. They look to the other side and they're like, yo, why are they getting so many avatar skins all the time? They have Final Fight collabs, they have Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, they have Spy X Family, right? They have all that stuff. And I think a lot of the competitive player base like kind of wanted those things, but on the actual cast so that they could play them in their actual games. For one reason or another, that's not the way they chose to go. But I think it's important to realize that avatar skins do make Capcom a shit ton of money in this game. And a lot of the things that happen for the competitive side of things probably could not happen if avatar skins were not selling as well as they did, right? The game obviously sold well on its own, but post-release monetizing fighting games is like really hard, I think, for devs in a lot of ways. And the whole avatar skin thing is helping them stay afloat and helping them have the resources to continue to support the game in one way or another. We have no idea how that support will manifest itself, but it does matter, right? It does matter. And so I think people should maybe like not feel so bad about it. Like, I think them getting avatar skins and stuff is totally fine. If you're developing something that's going to be used in a competitive format, you have to pay attention to so many more factors, right? There's so many more things you have to pay attention to, such as, like, for example, we have the Blanca skin right here, right? Like, they did the costume for Blanca, and even though that they've tweaked it since Street Fighter 5, we still get complaints of people saying, like, it's hard to make out where his hitboxes are, where his hurtboxes are, right? And, like, that stuff matters when we're talking about designing things to be put into a game that's going to be played for, in some cases, millions of dollars, right? So it matters. Okay, the last thing about the whole skin thing is the shift from Street Fighter 5 to Street Fighter 6. Like, in Street Fighter 5, they did a bunch of skins, and I remember they had like kind of a revenue split where a lot of the proceeds from the skin sales would go directly to Capcom Cup, right? Supporting kind of the esports infrastructure. I don't think there's anything like that going on this time around. Would have been nice to see, for sure. It's a big way of making people feel like they're not only purchasing something for themselves, but also benefiting a community that they want to be a part of, right? And that's important. That's really, really important. Creating that feeling in people goes a long way. And so I really would have loved to see them do something like that. Now, maybe they're thinking, oh, we're giving you fuckers $2 million as part of Capcom Pro Tour anyway. We don't need to do that. But I think it really does matter, especially when you're charging people so much for costumes, especially when you're pricing things in a way that forces them to pay more than is actually necessary. I think a lot of that blow would be softened if people were like, at least it's going towards something I actually care about, what the competitive tournament, ecosystem. That would have been great, but they didn't go that way. So I hope that they choose to change that moving forward. But that is the starting point. That's the end of the first section where we talk about Street Fighter 6's launch and kind of the stuff outside of the tour. And now we're going to move on to the tour itself and kind of getting into the nitty gritty. So we got to go to here. So this section, we're going to be starting with the format of Capcom Pro Tour, which is a big issue. You've heard people talk about format this, format that, but what actually is going on here? Okay, so I'm going to break it down for you. What's actually happening here? Capcom Cup this year qualified 48 people. 4 of those people were from offline premieres. We could actually like take a look at the schedule itself, but Evo was one of them. There was Singapore, there was France, right? There was these 3 right here, and then the LCQ. Those are the 4 offline, the offline premieres. I guess the LCQ is not a premiere, but it really is because the winner qualifies for Capcom Cup. Then the rest of the qualifying slots are from online. You can see they have the World Warrior system, they have the online premieres, right? And that's where the other 44 come from. This illustrates a really, really big issue, actually. Why is this a problem? Well, 4 people qualify offline, 44 people qualify online. You might ask, why is this such an enormous issue? It's because, what are we playing Capcom Cup on? We're playing Capcom Cup offline. So does it really make sense that an overwhelming majority of the people that qualify for the biggest offline event, the one with nearly $2 million in prizing, does it make sense that most of the people that qualify for said event qualify online as opposed to offline? No, it doesn't really make sense at all. And this is something that's been brought up with a lot of people. Now, I do think that there is a place in every world tour to implement online to some extent. I think this is way too much, though. There's no way you could convince me that online qualifiers should make up 11 times the amount of people that qualify from offline. Like, it just doesn't make sense. It doesn't make any sense, and it's a huge oversight on their part. And it kind of removed some of the hype, right? It like the offlines are really the cornerstone of fighting game community, and it's kind of what we base our entire identity and our entire ecosystem off of. How much more would have a lot of these events would have, like, they would have meant so much more if they were worth, you know, tour points, or you know, there were more qualifiers that were from direct offline events. That means so much to like maintaining momentum, right? And competitive momentum matters quite a lot, especially in a world where there's so many games and so many choices, and people are more prone to hopping around than they've ever been. So big mistake having so many online as opposed to offlines. You guys probably knew about that one. On top of that, the format has an issue in that they're all auto qualifiers. Now this is something that is detrimental, but you can't, like, it's like not something that a lot of people think about. So what do I mean by all auto qualifiers? The only people that ever qualify for any slot in Capcom Cup are people that win the event. That's it. All, it's first place only. You have to win a tournament in order to qualify. What does that mean? That means that, especially in certain regions, it's like nigh impossible. Even if you're a great player, right? You could just live in a really stacked region, right? And that makes it infinitely harder for you to qualify, because you're just kind of a victim of your circumstances, right? It doesn't matter if you go out and you're a fantastic player and you play second place, third place, second place, you get nothing, right? There's no points. There's no rewarding consistency of high placings. It only is focused on win or lose. And that is not a healthy way to do a world tour. You're supposed to the point of doing like multiple events in a world tour is to celebrate that consistency. The people that are traveling around the place are playing in a bunch of different events and doing really, really well. They should be rewarded for their time, right? They are just as owed a Capcom Cup slot as someone who wins Evo or wins, you know, an offline premiere. I really think they missed the mark with where they decided to put their focus on qualification. They should definitely do points, and if you do points, then it's much easier to see that, you know, Men RD plays second place in like 80 fucking events. He should definitely be in Capcom Cup, right? It's easy to see that Punk, who didn't qualify because he didn't win LCQ, right, should have been qualified for Capcom Cup, because every offline he went to, he did pretty well. He was pretty much in top 8 of just about everything he went to, if I remember correctly, right? That matters. And that's what I mean by they missed the mark on the format there. Should definitely switch to a point structure, because right now they're punishing the people that are extremely strong, but don't manage to win, don't manage to win an event. And the slots are really limited too. Like, there's only 3 offline premieres, right? And then the online premieres and whatnot, like the online events are region locked, right? So you can't even, it's not even like you could go and enter everything if you wanted to. You only have very, very few chances to actually qualify. Now they did points for World Warrior, right? They should have just done this for the entire, they should have done the point system for the entire leaderboard. It shouldn't have just been World Warrior. And so I think they have kind of the idea already ready for them. It's just a matter of they need to implement it into the places that actually matter, which again are these offline events. I need to see it next tour. Offlines need to be overwhelming majority of the qualification slots. You can have online, you can have them be relevant, absolutely do that, but it needs to be overwhelming majority offline, because we're playing offline. That's what Capcom Cup is. It's an offline event. Doesn't make sense for you to have most of your qualifications online. Doesn't make any sense at all. And the last thing with the kind of the layout is they kind of like dropped the ball on like some of the advertising, I feel like. So there were multiple occasions where I would look on Twitter Not Evo didn't have this issue because everyone knows about Evo. Nobody's ever going to be like, oh my God, when's Evo? I don't know when Evo is. Oh my God. Everyone knows when Evo is. So they don't have to worry about it. Evo's fine. The others, though, the offline Premier Singapore and the offline Premier France, I saw multiple posts from people that were saying, I didn't even know this was going on this weekend. Like, I had no idea. And this is a big deal, right? This is an auto qualification slot. And so, like, I feel like they didn't devote their resources to advertising these really, really big offlines either, which, again, just demonstrates that lack of focus onto where the focus should be. Like, if you're doing an offline premiere, that tells me, okay, this is the biggest deal, right? These are the biggest events. These are the ones that mean the most. Why are you not putting all your resources into advertising to make sure everyone knows when to tune in? There were some fantastic players at these events the entire time, and a lot of people missed them or damn near missed them because you just didn't advertise well, right? Yeah, I mean, they do stuff in like Battle Hub and stuff, but it needs to be more than that, right? Like, you can't, you are Capcom at this point, right? You're a leader in the fighting game space. You can't afford to get away with, you can't get away with minimum effort. You can't. You're Capcom, you're Street Fighter. Street Fighter is Street Fighter, bro. Like, you just can't, like, you can get away with this if you're a smaller fighting game, but you're Street Fighter. You cannot. You cannot, especially when the whole point of your marketing strategy is you are trying to get people to care about people playing for $1 million, right? Get them to care. Advertise well. Make sure there's no fucking way they can miss it, right? That's the way you have to go about these things. You have to shove it into people's face so much that they can't possibly miss it, right? The only time that they miss it is if they want to miss it. Other than that, they should be seeing advertisements left and right, right? Absolutely left and right all the time. All the time. It should be annoying to some people. Like, holy fuck, I'm tired of seeing this, right? That's what you have to do to get it into people's heads and make sure that they don't miss the stuff that they don't want to miss. So, big deal. Okay, that's the end of that section. Next section, the length. So this is a smaller section, but this is something that no one really talked about until probably a week or two before Capcom Cup. And this section is about Capcom Cup's length, right? It's a 9-day event. This is like a big deal, and I feel like people should have been talking about this immediately. Like, when Capcom Cup got revealed and I saw the schedule, I was like, this is unreasonable, right? This is unreasonable because it's a 9-day commitment, right? This is like, I guess technically it's 8 days, 3 days for LCQ, 3 days for groups, 1 day for SFL, 1 day for finals, right? So it's like eight days. But whenever you factor in, like, you have to fly in the day before and all that, like, it gets out of hand very quickly. This is the big commitment, right? 9 days potentially, right? Like, if you're in LCQ and you have to participate here or there, right? Like, this is a big commitment, right? This is a big commitment, and they did not put out seating early enough to where, like, people could plan their trip around it, right? Like, it's not like they had everything planned out 2 months ahead of time so that you could schedule your flight to be there only whenever you need to be there, right? You bought your flight ahead of time because flight prices go up very fast, and then you get told when you're actually going to be playing pretty close to the event, right? So that's a big deal. 9 days is a big commitment. I think that they really overestimated how many people would sign up for LCQ. I could actually pull up StartGG real quick. I think maybe they were thinking that, like, Street Fighter 6 is so big, our launch was so successful that there's going to be, thousands of people potentially signing up for LCQ, when that's not the case. And part of the reason that that's not the case is because people don't have this type of time to give up. No, they overestimated. They thought more people would sign up than actually did, right? There were only 320 people signed up for LCQ. And I say only because, like, a 3-day event, right? 320 person tournament, you could run in a day, actually. You could run in a day. I have run 320 person tournaments in 1 day before, right? Now, there are different things to consider, obviously, because there's broadcasting. You want to stream a bunch of stuff and you want to do that. You want to do content pieces and this and that, right? I totally get that. But the amount of time spent on the LCQ being 3 days, as opposed to how many people signed up, 321, is not proportionate, right? And so like that just leads to people committing more time than they really need to, and this really matters for everyone that doesn't win. If you win, obviously you're going to be there either way because you want to play through to the end, right? But if you don't win, which is damn near everyone, damn near everyone doesn't win, you spend a lot of time there, right? And people have lives, right? They have families, they have work, they have all that, right? Now, if you're unsponsored, now obviously that's not the case for everyone. Like a lot of people at the LCQ, there are sponsored players. They might be professionals, they might do it full time, right? But I'm saying that there is a lot of people that probably would consider playing in the LCQ if it was less of a time commitment, if there was more communicated with all of that, and that matters. So hopefully they decide to change that moving forward. You could do 2 days. Honestly, 2 days would be a lot better. You play through most of the tournament on day 1. You do top 16 or top 8 day 2, right? You don't need to do 3 days. 3 days is just excessive, just from an organizational standpoint. You just don't need to do it. Also, SFL finals, right? So we're going to be watching that today, and it's actually really interesting because it doesn't make sense. To me, it does not make sense where they've decided to put SFL finals. So I will pull up, I'll pull this up really quick. So this is the Capcom website, the Capcom Cup website. And so if you see how the schedule is, it goes LCQ with the first 3 days, then they took a break, then group stage, 3 days. And then after group stage ended yesterday, today is SFL championships, right? The team event that they do. And then the finals are tomorrow, top 16. Now, I personally don't like the way that they did this because once groups are over, right, people have kind of ramped up that excitement and everything. Now, I get wanting to give players a day to rest and whatnot, but you kind of take them out of that ramp, right? Like the way that things are building up, you do the LCQ, you do group stages. Group stages are really fucking crazy. And now people are on the edge of their seat wanting to see the conclusion. Who's going to walk away a millionaire and all that. You already got them all gassed up. And they get kind of taken out of that experience by you sticking SFL World Finals in between groups and Capcom Cup, right? In my eyes, after groups were over and everyone is dialed in, and everyone's like, holy shit, those groups are crazy, right? I'm excited to see what happens next. You should be devoting all your time and resources to delivering that experience to them, right? They should only care about who is playing in top 16. And you kind of take their attention away from that by doing SFL. Now, I'm not saying SFL is not going to be entertaining. I'm not saying it's not a great content piece. I'm not saying that. I just think it should have been in a different way. Like, I think you should have done SFL first, right? If you do SFL first before Capcom Cup, because Capcom Cup is what we're there for, right? This is what we're here for, the actual Capcom Cup tournament, right? Then it's like an opening act, right? Like it's important, there's money on the line and all that, but like it doesn't take away from the importance of the main event itself, right? Once you get people dialed into Capcom Cup, you want them to stay locked in, you want them to be invested, and you want them to carry that energy throughout the entire end of the event, right? And so I really think that they should have done SFL first. It also saves time. It also saves time for people that aren't in SFL, right? Because if it was group stage was these days and then Capcom Cup finals were the next day, right? There's only that 1 day in between. You don't have this extra day where most people are doing nothing, right? Most people aren't in SFL, so they're not participating. It's just kind of a dead day for them, right? It's a day of rest, but at the end of the day, like that's still time and money spent. It's hotel rooms, all that stuff. So I think they should have done that first. I would have liked to see them do it before everything, but you know, it is what it is. So that's the end of that section. Next section is format itself, so the actual tournament. And so this is one that you guys have probably seen talked about quite a lot, but we're gonna go a little bit more in depth with it. So the first thing that I have written down is the seeding, right? And so this is where we start to see cracks in the philosophy behind how they designed Capcom Cup and how it's inherently flawed. So what I was saying before with, you know, the whole offline online thing and doing the points, right? What that does is it doesn't only give people a more fair and more consistent means of qualifying, right, outside of just winning an event. It also streamlines this process where now you have people qualified for Capcom Cup. How do you seed them, right? That is a difficult thing to do if you don't have anything to go off of. And so what did they do instead? They decided to do random draws, right? And random draws have an inherent problem of, first of all, we're talking about competition, and you're introducing variance and you're introducing RNG into an avenue that there doesn't need to be, right? The other thing is that they neglected to seed people apart via like regions and whatnot, right? Like, even though they qualify from two different places, no one wants to see Mena and Kaba in the same pool. No one wants to see, like these are not things that they want to see. I think it was the two people from South Africa were also in the same pool, or the two people from Africa were in the same pool. It's like, that's not what people want to see, right? That's not what we're here for, right? If you do points in your World Tour structure, what that does is whenever you get to the point where it's like, okay, we have our 48 players for Capcom Cup, how do we seed them? You just seed them by the people that qualified from the offline premieres, and then after that, it's all points. Who had the most points, right? Points. And then you can move things around a little bit for regional conflicts. And then I think people would have been a lot happier because, what we ended up with was things like Group D and Group F, right? Everyone talked about Group F that had Mana RD, Lashar, Angry Bird, Ending Walker, right? Nero the Boxer, Kaba, right? Like, this is an absolutely insane pool, and it's a pool that should never happen, right? It should never, ever happen that way. Because if you do it in the way of points, that would never happen. Mena RD and Angry Bird have would have two of the highest point values due to their performances and consistency, and so they would never ever be put in the same pool, right? It just doesn't make any sense. And so that's what I mean by the mistakes that they made in the format initially had impacts on the event itself after, right? Even directly. So seeding, not great. Lack of regional separation, not great. Whole events 2 out of 3, except for top 16, right? All of this, last chance qualifier and groups, all 2 out of 3. Now, this is a problem because Street Fighter 6 is the game that a lot of people will tell you it feels pretty volatile at times, right? Because of how explosive the game is, because of its mechanics, because of its damage, and how easily things can swing because of things like perfect parry, and drive rush and DI. Like, these are swing mechanics. Like, things can happen. And so it would have been really nice to see the entire event be 3 out of 5, just to, you mitigate a lot of variance. That's why we play longer sets in tournaments. As we get further in the tournament, we play longer sets because we're trying to eliminate the relevancy of variance as much as possible, right? We're trying to make it as consistent as possible. I think that once last chance qualifier being 2 out of 3, like, okay, sure. But groups, though, I feel like you probably should have done 3 out of 5, especially if you're going to do this round robin format where game differential actually matters, right? All it does is make the results more consistent. How do you mitigate variance? You make people play more games. If you go to other games like card games and stuff like that, right? They play more games to kind of reduce the relevance of the RNG, right? It's kind of like that here too. Play more games so that we are absolutely sure that whoever is playing the best on that given weekend are the people that are qualifying for top 16. 2 out of 3, feels like a dropped ball here. You have 3 days that you're playing this over. You could have gotten away with 3 out of 5. I think you definitely could have. You might have had to start it a little bit early and whatnot, but it's Capcom Cup, right? We're not there to do anything else but play and stream Street Fighter. You can do 3 out of 5 for the entire thing, right? Absolutely. And they deserve it, right? People that slog through the way that this format went in the tour and all that, they do all of this just to be eliminated in 2 out of 3. It's like, it just doesn't feel great, right? I think it definitely could have been room for that there. Then on top of that, we have the best of 1 tiebreaker rule, which I don't believe, someone can correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think it came into play this time, but I want to tell you guys about how dumb this rule is. So the way that pools work is it's round robin. And so the the most important criteria is how many sets you win versus how many sets you lose, right? It's your set record. And after that, it goes to game differential. So games in individual sets actually matter, which I think is a good thing. A lot of people say, there's people that say that they don't like the way that is. I think it really, I like that. I like that a lot. I like that every single game matters. And so like you winning 2-0 means more than you winning 2-1. Like, I think that's really good. And it creates tension, and it creates that feeling that like every single moment while you're part of this event and you're competing matters. There's no wasted motion. I like that. And so they go to the games afterwards, and if you're completely tied on both of them, they have the best of one tiebreaker rule, where they actually take the amount of people that were tied. For most cases, we'd be talking about a 3-way tie. It could work with any other number, but I think three-way tie is probably the funniest example. So they take the 3 people that tied, they seed them randomly. This is in their rules, by the way. You can go read this. They take the 3 people, they seed them randomly, 1, 2, 3, and they seed them into a single elimination bracket. Now, why is this important? Because a single elimination bracket has a bye with 3 people. So that means the person that draws first seed in that situation has to play 1 less match than the others, right? 2 and 3 have to play against each other, and then the winner plays 1 to determine who breaks the tie, right? Naturally unfair. One person has to play less matches than the other 2. Total bullshit, right? On top of that, it's best of 1. It's not even a set. It's 1 game. It's best of 1 single elimination randomly seeded bracket. Makes absolutely no sense. It is absolute joke. Whoever decided on this format for your tiebreakers, you are actually foolish. You're foolish because it's like absolutely insane to expect people to play a best of 1 single elimination random seeded bracket to determine who gets a shot at $1 million and who doesn't, right? Doesn't make any sense. Completely dropped the ball in the format there. I don't know if it came into play at any point this week. I don't think it did. Thank God. I don't think it did, but complete nonsense, right? There are so many other tiebreakers you could do. A lot of fighting game communities take the simplest tiebreakers. They're not willing to do the more complicated ones. But I think at the biggest event of the year, and something that you're marketing to be the biggest fighting game tournament of all time, you should go the extra step to make sure that your tiebreakers are fair to people. And it just feels like that was not worried about here, right? And in round robin, these things can very feasibly happen, right? It's way more common than you think. So don't like that. Last thing, I need to pull up a let me see if I can pull this up real quick. This is about, do I have it? Here it is. Yeah, the setups. So if you've been watching Capcom Cup, and especially if you watched MenRD on the first day, you will notice that a lot of drop combos are happening. Especially like MenRD was the one that stuck out most to me because he was playing Luke and he was missing his follow-up perfect knuckle a lot. Like pretty much every time he did it, he dropped it. And I was like, that's pretty weird. Usually he's pretty consistent with execution. We don't usually see this happening to this caliber of player. It turns out that some players were saying that there were some issues with the setups. There was some potential lag. I don't know what exact hardware and what things they're using for their setups, but if this is actually the case, it's actually pretty ugly, right? Like when you do an event of this caliber, the players should never ever have to worry about something like this, right? They should be able to show up and focus on nothing but competing to win and literally nothing else. Like that's your job as a tournament organizer, to create that environment for people. Having potentially messed up setups like jeopardizes the sanctity of the entire competition that you're running in the first place, because it kind of builds that resentment, like I said, right? The moment that someone feels like they lost to something outside of them, their own performance, you've kind of created that situation where your legitimacy is just really in question, right? If I go and I qualify for this big ass tournament and the setup is laggy or something's wrong or something like that, like how inclined am I going to be to go to another tournament run by you again, right? Not very. If I have a brain, I'm gonna be like, I don't know if I really want to waste my time on that again, right? And so I really hope that this wasn't the case, but there were multiple reports of it. I saw things from Joe Rogan. I saw things from, I believe Mr. Crimson said something about it, and then of course the MenRD thing. He said on the first day, I'll get used to the setup. Like, there shouldn't be that much getting used to if it's not that different. If it's not different from the tournament standard, then there shouldn't be that much getting used to. You should be able to hop on and be fine, right? So that leads me to believe that there was actually something potentially funky with the setup, which is a travesty, and they definitely need to take extra steps to make sure that's not a problem in the future. Street Fighter 6 does require more overhead on setups than the average fighting game, for sure. Because to run Street Fighter 6 optimally in tournament, you need PS5, you need a VRR capable monitor, which they can be expensive. They can be expensive. They also tend to be higher refresh rate, which is why you see those, you guys see those Sony ads all the time, right? On fighting game streams involving Street Fighter. It's because they're the people that provide the monitors for the biggest events. Like Evo was all in like the Sony monitors, right? And they're like pretty much perfect for running Street Fighter 6. Now, I don't know if they did that for Capcom Cup, but kind of makes you feel like they didn't, or they misconfigured something on the setup, which happens as well, because you have to like mess with HDR settings, and there's just a lot. There's a lot that actually goes into like setting up a setup for Street Fighter 6 as optimally as possible. But you should be sparing no expense, right? You should be sparing no expense in these situations. So no excuse for them. If that's actually the case, then shame on you. Fix it for next time, please. Okay, next section. Pricing. Oh man, I've been talking about this over the past few days. I'm sure some of the people that tune into me are probably sick of hearing me talk about this, but this is going to be the time where I like really make you understand how ridiculous it is that how they've chosen to split the prize pool at Capcom Cup, because it actually doesn't make any sense. But first, before we go to that, we're going to talk about the fact that they came out and told us beforehand. I actually don't think I don't have the tweet saved, but there was a tweet that came out before Capcom Cup that pretty much was warning people to not get their hopes up about announcements, right? They were like, yeah, we're not actually going to be showing anything involving, you know, DLC or new content or this or that. And so there's a few different things to glean from it. One, like, communication is good, right? I don't want anyone to get the wrong idea about that. If you actually have, you know, nothing to show and this and that, then like it is better to tell people ahead of time, right? Because you don't betray their expectations. If you don't say anything, then everyone tunes in expecting something, right? And while that will probably it probably will lead to you having better viewership. Again, that resentment thing that I was talking about. If you do all that and then you announce nothing, then people are like, bro, this is complete bullshit. I can't believe I wasted my time, this and that. And if you're a Dragon Ball FighterZ player or spectator, you will understand exactly what the fuck I mean, right? It should be painstakingly clear, right? And so them telling people ahead of time is absolutely a good thing. I don't mind them doing that. However, I will say that to me, there's no excuse for you to have nothing, right? If you have nothing, then yes, tell people. But in my eyes, you shouldn't have nothing. The reason that you shouldn't have nothing is because you've already held off for so long on like patching the game. Your DLC policy has been pretty lax, all things considered. Like, it took a long time for people to even learn about Ed. We didn't learn about Ed until this month, essentially. People still haven't seen anything about Akuma, right? Even though you announced when these characters were going to come out like far ahead of time. And so like you should have something to show, right? Something. No real excuse for you to have nothing, right? It just doesn't make sense in my mind. Also, thank you for the sub, Arcana. Yeah, so that seems like a missed opportunity, especially because like you're devoting all of your resources to marketing this one event, right? This one weekend, you know, the lights are on, everyone's watching, right? That is the best time for you to announce some shit, because you keep people on the cycle of excitement, right? You keep it going. People are like, oh my God, this tournament's so exciting. And they announce this, oh my God, this shit's going to be crazy. We're all taken care of, right? That's the feeling that you're looking to create. I don't think they really did this because they have pretty much taken the wind out of people's sails before that weekend. Now, there are some things to make note of here. One, they could be lying, right? They could just lie, right? They could just lie and say we have nothing to show and then actually show something, right? I don't like that. If that is the case, I don't like them doing that, right? Because at that point you're just relying on cheap shock value, right? And if the product that you're delivering is actually good and legitimate, you shouldn't need the shock value, right? People should just be taken aback by what you're showing, right? They should be so blown away by what you're showing that you don't need the shock value in that case, right? They're just going to be excited for it either way because what you're showing is good, right? And what you're showing is exciting. So they could be lying. Probably not that likely. The other thing is social media marketing. So like my idea is that I think they didn't want to show anything, partially because they wanted to let social media kind of do the marketing for them. So you guys have probably seen people make posts about Ed, right? And the new build of Street Fighter. Like not only did people check Ed, but they also started checking other characters because it's playable there at Capcom Cup. People were starting to notice changes with certain characters. For example, like Zangief can do, I believe the first hit of EX Lariat or OD Lariat into level 3. He can combo it, right? That's a big change. That's a change. And we only learned about this because there were players that are there at Capcom Cup that were allowed to get hands-on with the new build with Ed, and they started testing things and started putting things on Twitter. Now, this is a double-edged sword. In some ways, it's like the people that are actually there and testing get so much viewership, right? They get so much viewership and so much attention from just showing the things that are changed because they have literal access that overwhelming majority of people don't. You have to be there at Capcom Cup to have that access, right? There's no one else that can get to it before you. So that's important. But at the same time, it really feels like there was a missed opportunity. Like I get that you want to have it on social media and this and that, but there's also been a lot of misinformation that has come with that as well. There's been people that are like, oh my God, Luke's crouch medium punch has changed. And then it turns out it's not, right? There's placebo effect, there's hysteria. Like everyone's like, oh my God, check my character. Oh my God, did they change this? Oh my God, they did change this. It reminds me of like whenever they did this for Strive, when I believe it was when Asuka, was it when Asuka came out? It was when season 3 started. There were people that were trying like new patch. I think it was when season 3 started, but there was a new patch that came out and players that were at the event got to try out new things. And the thing that always sticks in my mind is the people that tried Axel. They tried Axel and they were pressing his buttons and they were convinced that Axel's normals were shorter. Like they nerfed Axel's normals to be shorter. And there was like a huge thing on Twitter about it. People were freaking out. They're like, oh my God, why the fuck would they do this? This is the dumbest shit ever. This company's dog shit. Why would they do that? And then it turns out they weren't changed at all. They're exactly the same. And so that's what I mean by like it's a double-edged sword. Like you get people riled up through this like being kind of drip-fed information. And unfortunately, the quality of that information cannot be verified quickly in a lot of ways because it's the player error, right? You could just tell us exactly what's changed, and then we don't have to go through that, right? Then we don't have to go through any of that. But so yeah. Next thing, stream quality. So this is actually really, really weird that we have to even bring up this issue, but there's been a lot of people, myself included, that have noticed that the stream quality at Capcom Cup this weekend is really not up to par with what you would expect to. Street Fighter 6 is a pretty good looking game, and I will address the elephant in the room that fighting games on Twitch look way worse than they actually should because of how Twitch limits bit rates and whatnot. We're locked at 6K bit rate, soft cap. I think for partners it can go up to 8K, but like fighting games are high motion games, and so visual fidelity gets threatened severely whenever things are going on, like when there's a lot of movement, and there's a lot of movement in fighting games because, you know, there's a lot of camera work, there's a lot of you know, particle effects, a lot of things that go on. And you guys could probably seen that if you watch a fighting game on Twitch, especially like an anime game, right? When a lot of shit is going on, it gets really pixelated, right? And it's like sometimes hard to make out what the hell is going on. That being said, Capcom has money, and they have the resources to make sure that they bring the top level quality possible to the event. It feels like they haven't done that, right? And so like this post is talking about there's no excuse for them streaming on YouTube their biggest $2 million tournament in 480i upscale, right? Like that doesn't make sense. Why would you be streaming a 480i upscale, right? That like actually doesn't make any sense. You should be streaming at the highest quality. I mean, honestly, I'm surprised they're not trying to stream in you know, 1440 or 4K or whatever. But yeah, it's kind of embarrassing. There are legit there are legit like weekly small streamers that have much better quality than Capcom brought to the table early on. Now I do believe that it was said that their quality has gone up a bit since it started, but at the beginning it was very noticeably bad. And so maybe it just is a matter of them taking time to figure out settings, but that's embarrassing, right? That's immortalized as well. Like the VODs are not gonna lie. People are gonna boot up the VODs and see that how it looked. And so I think that's pretty bad look. Another thing, production thing, audio has been a big issue. Now, I happen to dabble a little bit in production. I'm not going to claim to be like the biggest expert on it. Like obviously they have a whole production team. There's a lot of moving parts. There's a lot of people involved, right? But a lot of the mistakes that I believe I've witnessed have been pretty easy to address. Like you guys have been seeing, I brought it up a few times that like when they do transitions, sometimes there's multiple instances of music playing overlapping with each other, right? While also at the same time, the commentators or the hosts are trying to tell us something. Like that's distracting, right? You don't want that. That takes away from the seamless experience. It really distracts people from really what's going on. Also the music choice, right? Like they're playing the same songs over and over and over again. People have been complaining about hearing JP theme relentlessly, right? You have a lot of different tracks in this game. People are going to argue on Twitter over whether the soundtrack is good or not, but like you shouldn't treat it like there's only 3 songs in the game, right? You have a whole soundtrack. Just play a bunch of different songs. Even if you have to click shuffle and let it take over from there, that's fine. Why not? You shouldn't be ashamed of the songs that you put in the game in the first place. And so yeah, I don't know why that they only decided to play JP and Jamie theme. Like that's pretty much the only 2 songs that we hear throughout the course of the weekend. It doesn't make any sense, right? There's so much more. There's so much more to play. And there are other songs on the OST that are good that people would probably love to hear. And there's a lot of opportunity to switch it up too, because there's breaks, there's transition points in between matches, there's while the commentators are talking, there's like there's a lot of opportunity, right? So it's not like you don't have the opportunity to switch it up. So you should whenever you do have the opportunity. Okay, now the big part, the prize pool, the prize split. Okay, $1 million is the entire thing that this Capcom Cup is predicated on, right? They have pretty much all in on this marketing behind, we're gonna hand the winner $1 million, and it's a really big deal because that's never been done before. It's the single highest amount handed to one player in a fighting game for winning a fighting game ever, right? I believe before this, it would have been Gamers 8, which handed 400,000 to Kakeru. I don't think that NRS handed out something bigger than that. Feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, guys, but I don't think NRS did. I think 400K was the biggest before this. And so like Capcom Cup bringing $1 million to the table, it's a big leap, right? And so they understand that it's a big leap. And so what they have done is they've devoted every single bit of resource to really trying to make you guys know that this is $1 million on the line. This is $1 million on the line. This is $1 million on the line, right? And with that comes some really big mistakes. But first, let's talk about the good things. The good news. At the beginning of each day on Capcom Cup, there's been this really cool promotional video. It features Rob TV. You guys have seen the intro video where he kind of like hypes you up and he talks about how like this is a game changer, right? This is like such a departure from what fighting games has experienced. It really speaks on our growth as a community, right? Like we are the poverty kids for all intents and purposes, right? Like we're the small guys. We don't have a ton of money in our ecosystem. We don't have tournaments with huge prize pools very often. And so like this is a big deal that we do have a tournament with this large of prize pool. And it's cool that you have one of the biggest personalities in Street Fighter actually like taking you through the story and kind of creating those storylines and creating that narrative, right? And to get really people invested. That's what you want to do when you run events. You want people to be invested, right? That's what it's all about, getting people invested. Make them feel like they're really a part of something special, right? That's the whole point. That's the reason that I run events, right? I like to tell people I don't run events, I create experiences, right? I want you to have a memory. I want you to remember something really cool that happened, something that will never leave your mind, and that's what it should be. And so that's really good that they're deciding to do content pieces like that. Rob TV is honestly shout out to him. He's killing it this weekend. The intro, they're doing the egg roll thing. They're pretty much doing like a mock Hot Ones where he, asked them a bunch of questions while they're eating sauces on egg roll. Like, it's cool. It's like really cool. You get to learn more about the players that before you've only seen their gameplay, but now you get to hear about their come up and what they're fighting for, why it's so important to them. Like, that stuff matters so damn much, right? And so good on them for realizing that this is a very important part of fighting game history and taking the steps to do that. That being said, this $1 million stuff has had some really, really big drawbacks that I really, really hope they're paying attention to whenever they decide to draw up plans for next year. And I'd say when they draw up plans, but I'm sure the second iteration of Capcom Pro Tour for Street Fighter 6 is already planned out, and we're going to learn about it this weekend, most likely. What do I mean? Okay, well, first of all, like I said, they go out of their way to mention $1 million as much as possible. If you go back and you watch all the VODs and you listen to like Tasty Steve and you listen to James Chen and all, right, they bring up $1 million a lot, right? I am positive that they were told in their commentator briefing, make sure you bring up the $1 million every X amount of time, because it is a focal point of the marketing, right? $1 million, $1 million, $1 million. Make people realize this $1 million, $1 million, $1 million. Despite that fact, there's still a lot of people that don't even realize that this is the tournament that is for $1 million because of everything else surrounding it. Completely different story. But even the trophy itself, right? Like if you look at the if you go and you look at the stage piece for Capcom Cup, there's like the trophy on a stand, and then there's literally a safe with with money bags and gold bars, fake gold bars, as the stage piece. Like, they really, really care about like this being a lot of money on the line, right? Like, it's very, very clear they care a shit ton about it. And so missed opportunity, right? Missed opportunity because they have diverted attention away from what really matters. You can pay someone $1 million all you want, but when you've distributed it the way that they are, it really means little to a lot of people. So here is the demonstration. Here's the demonstration. This is really, really important for those of you who don't understand why the way that they're splitting up pricing is bad, right? So Capcom Cup this year has a prize pool of 1.7. It's like $1.734 million, right? We'll just say 1.7 million just to make it easy. However, the way that they're splitting it up amongst the people that are participating makes it so you don't actually impact nearly as many people as you could. So here's my exhibit A, right? I will move myself over here for this. So in this column, labeled old, this is the old pricing, right? And so by old, I mean current pricing. This is what they're actually using, right? So $1 million to the winner, and then it goes to 300K, and then 200K, then 100K, then 10, then 7, then 5, then 4, then 2, right? And for placements that get paid multiple times, I'll put it over here on the left. So hopefully all the information that you guys need is there. Now, really, really big issues with this. And to illustrate this point, I've actually taken the liberty of doing the percentages itself. And if you look at the percentages and you look at the raw amounts, you will start to notice that, man, for a $1.7 million tournament, people are really not getting paid nearly as much as they should, right? You qualifying for Capcom Cup and, drowning pools, that's what this is, 17th and 33rd. If you drown in pools, right? You fought hard throughout the entire year. You endured all that dog shit qualification method, all that stuff, and you drown in pools, potentially to a tiebreaker, right? You get 2K. This is not anything, honestly. For an event with nearly $2 million in prize pool, 2K for qualifying, it's unacceptable. Absolutely unacceptable. This like barely even covers trips for certain people. If you're from out of country, you have to fly over here. Right. That does not cover your entire trip. It just doesn't. Now, I don't know if Capcom is paying for players' travel directly. Some world tours do that. They do cover your transportation and housing and all that for the entire weekend. There's probably some of that, but still, 2K, not enough. It's just not. It's not, especially when you know the scale of which this is an international event. Like, what about the people from Australia, bro? Like, you think 2K covers trip there and back, and to stay there they miss out on work pay. They miss out on, potentially streaming pay. A lot of these players are choosing not to stream to participate in Capcom Cup, right? Like, that is a big deal, right? You're not paying them enough. 0.12% on that. dog shit, right? It should no other word for it. Unacceptable, right? These splits only really are good. The only real good pay is top 4, right? That's when like we're talking about like real like life-changing money. Now any amount of money that pays, right, can be life-changing to someone depending on their situation and this and that. But this massive divide, right, doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense, especially for it to be in the place that it is. Why is it top 4? Why is it top 4 that it jumps so much? That doesn't make any sense, because if it were top 3, then I would be able to say, okay, then maybe they only care about the people that podium, right? Like, you know, in competitive sports, there's always the podium, the bronze, silver, and gold. But why top 4? Why would 4th be the place where that doesn't make sense? It's like really arbitrary where they've chosen to put this leap. And so like that doesn't sit right to me, that this is where the giant leap is. The match that determines 4th versus 5th is a $90,000 money match, right? And that matters because it skirts the line. So I was talking about this earlier, the concept of straddling the line. There's a line that most people, an overwhelming majority of people, will agree that separates life-changing money versus not life-changing money. Now, we can argue about this left and right, but this is the concept I'm presenting, right? The problem with 10K versus 100K is that it straddles that line. That line is somewhere in the middle, right? In between them. And so it's life-changing money versus not life-changing money. And you put it in a place that is very arbitrary. 4th versus 5th place is not that big of a deal, right? It's one set, and in any other tournament, it wouldn't be that there wouldn't be this massive divide like this, right? Prize splits do not change that much from 5th to 4th in an overwhelming majority of cases. Why did it stick it here? I don't know. I do not know, right? That's not the only issue. I also think the divide between 1st and 2nd, complete dog shit, right? Now, some will give them a pass, right? Some will give them a pass because they're like, oh, they want to hand the first person and hand the person that wins $1 million. I am here to tell you that the impact of handing a single person $1 million is not nearly as much as the impact that would be had if you pay everyone fairly, right? And so I actually have a few examples for you. So the first example that I'm going to show you is something that I literally just came up with while we were watching Capcom Cup. I was like, what if I had the resources and I wanted to make the payout just a little bit fairer? And it's important to notice that when I made this payout structure, I made it with traditionalist fighting game ideals in mind, in that I have a ramp. I have a ramp on my pricing, meaning that as you go up, you're fighting for more and more difference, right? So the difference between this is 10K, this is 10K, but then this is 25K in between, then this is 50K in between, then this is 50K, then it's 50K, then it's 100K, then it's 200K, right? There's a ramp. As you go further and further in the tournament, the difference between payouts are more and more. That's a traditionalist thing. And the reason that it's traditionalist is because fighting games have not had good payouts for a long time. And when you don't have a lot of money, you need to have that ramp, because it makes people feel like, you know, each individual fight means that much more. That becomes negligible once we get past a certain point, and I'll explain that later. But the main differences between mine, right? Instead of paying everyone 2K for showing up and not making top 16 bracket, you're paying 5K, 2.5 times the original, right? That's a big deal. This is a big jump, right? 5K American is a big deal. That covers everyone's trip. I don't think there's anyone that's spending 5K to be at Capcom Cup this weekend. So you're gonna profit. Like, even if you have to pay out of pocket to get there and back, you're still profiting, right? No matter what. Whereas I think with 2K, it's kind of up in the air, right? It's kind of up in the air. Big thing on mine as well, right? Instead of paying first place $1 million, you pay them 500K. I don't think that the idea of paying the first place $1 million is actually that big of a deal, right? It's just not. I know they want the marketing and being able to say $1 million tournament, $1 million tournament. But the thing that you start to realize is that you could actually market it as a $1 million tournament, even when you don't pay first place $1 million, right? If you tell people there's over $1 million in prizes or nearly $2 million in prizes, the result is the same, especially to the average person that tunes in. The average person that tunes in and watches a fighting game tournament, they don't know shit about what I'm telling you guys right now, right? They don't know anything about prize splits. They don't, and much less why it's bad to do prize splits in this way. They don't know and they do not care, right? And so like your marketing does not change. They're still going to tune in because it's still $1 million. There's still millions of dollars involved, right? They're going to tune in either way. If that's what drew them to the tournament, they're still going to be there. It's not going to change because the first place gets paid $500K as opposed to $1 million there. Everyone watched Gamers 8, right? Gamers 8 was also a $1 million tournament. We all watched. Why? It's a $1 million tournament. They didn't pay first place $1 million. Kakeru won $400K for winning that. It wasn't $1 million, right? We still all watched because they still get to market $1 million tournament, right? That's what I mean by it's not a big difference. And so you slash first place in half, $500K is still life-changing for anyone, right? Anyone that's playing fighting games for a living, $500K is a big deal. You could not convince me otherwise. Your life is going to change significantly for winning 500K, right? Straight up. You slash that in half, and what that allows you to do, right, is that lets you pay everyone not only more fairly, but in a lot of cases, like significant life-changing money in these cases, right? And so my biggest jump on this entire thing, right, is the difference between 5K and 15K. Now, my place for this split makes way more sense, right? It's not between 4th and 5th, where there's not really that big of a significance between 4th and 5th in a tournament, right? There is a big difference between 17th, 33rd, and 13th. Why? Because this is drowning in pools, right? This means you lost in groups. This means you qualified for top 16, right? Much easier to explain to someone like, why is the jump here? This is why. This is where we designate you made it out of pools, you did not make it out of pools. Everyone that has ever participated or looked at a fighting game tournament understands the significance of making out of pools versus not making out of pools, right? Very, very easy to understand, right? So that's like where, that's the most significant jump on this entire thing. Other than that, the amount of money that people get paid out, you can see the percentages, right? I've put the new percentages over the old percentage. Everyone gets paid better. Everyone gets paid better except for second and third, which, you know, it's still 300K and 200K, still life-changing either way. And you get 50% of the old payout, but still, again, super, super life-changing either way, right? Everyone gets paid better. And so like, that's what I mean by, you could just do this in a way that just pays people better, just straight up. Like, there's not really an excuse here to do it this way. You cannot convince me that qualifying for top 8 of the biggest fighting game tournament, the one that you've marketed to have $2 million prize pool, 7K is all that's worth. That's what you're trying to convince me? 7K, that's all that's worth? That means you don't really, you know, you don't really think these people are worth anything, right? If 7K is all they're worth, then placing top 8 in this big of a tournament, to me that says that you don't think it's that big of a deal. And it should be a big deal, right? It absolutely should be. And what this payout tells me is that it's not. 7K, abysmal for making top 8. Are you kidding? No, pay them 50, and that's a year's salary, right? That's a solid year's salary, right? And that's what it should be. If you're trying to make this a legitimate conversation, a legitimate competition, and trying to make it so people can live off of it, right? Like, that's the goal of esports, is to create an ecosystem where people can actually do this for a living, and that alone, right? Right now, the fighting game landscape is really predicated on streaming, right? Because tournament prize pools are not that high. And so like, even if you're winning a bunch of events, it's hard to live on that, right? You have to stream to make your money that way. And you see that with a lot of the best Street Fighter players currently, right? We want to create an environment where it is feasible that if you're that caliber of player, you could actually live on it for a year and not have to stream if you don't want to. Now, many will choose to do it anyway, but that's not the point, right? That's not the point. You want to present that option to them, right? You want to present that option to them. Okay. But I was actually talking to a friend of mine. His name is Aiden. Just to give you guys some backstory, Aiden, I will show you guys his Twitter real quick. Because I also, since he offered his idea, I want to make sure I give him due credit. This is Aiden. Aiden is someone that I look up to. I met Aiden whenever I started working for Start GG, like back in college. He was the person that like trained me and everything. He also ran the Smash series Don't Park on the Grass. He also was a part of Beyond the Summit before Operation ceased there. And now he works for Mogul Moves, which is Ludwig. If you guys know the content creator Ludwig, it's his brand. And so that's where he works right now. Aiden and I go way back, and I asked him, if you had the budget that Capcom Cup had to split prizes, how would you do it, right? Now, since he has been dealing with bigger esports for a long time, the concept of like adhering to fighting game traditionalist formats is not a thing for him, right? He comes from Smash, and he went to bigger esports after that, right? He's never dealt with traditional FGC on that level. And so this is his split, and you guys are going to be like, wow, right? So this is his. Let me zoom in a little bit for you guys. You can see, hopefully you guys can see. Now, his is very interesting. His is very interesting. The immediate thing to notice, right? And before we get a bunch of smartasses in chat or in YouTube comments, you're like, oh my god, it's 2 million instead of 1.7. Believe me when I tell you the difference between this and 2 million is not a lot for them, right? It's not. If they like had a brain, they would just do 2 million, right? Like you just do 2 million. And you will see that the impact of this is going to be really, really shown. But the splits are what matter more than the actual raw amount itself. You could do the same splits with the 1.7 and it would still be eons better than what we have now. Immediate thing to notice, right? 400K, right? To first, not too far off what we at before, but the drops between each, right? The drops between each are not nearly as severe. There's no ramp on this, right? So I was talking about before with my proposed change, it has the ramp up. Like, as in you're playing for more and more difference as you go up. And I was talking to him about this, and he told me this. He said that when you have reached a certain point in esports for prize, you don't have to have ramp because the amount of money that you're paying people is going to be significant either way. Like, no matter what, it's going to be really, really significant. And the amount that they're playing for is going to be really, really significant. So you don't have to do ramp. And you know what? After thinking about it, he's right. He's absolutely right. If we're talking about $2 million, you don't need there to be a ton of difference between how much they're playing for in this round and this round, right? It's 40K different tier, and then it's 60K and then 80K. Like, that's not huge differences between each match, right? And you don't need them to be. But what this structure does is this allows more people to actually live on fighting games, right? That lets them live on fighting games. We're talking about you qualify out of pools, 25K. That is going to make you feel like your time was well spent, right? Even if you didn't qualify for top 8, you made it out of pools, 25K, right? That's a big deal. That's a really, really big deal, right? And that's going to change the way that people think about fighting games, and like even more, it affects the ecosystem in a way that, like, you know, a lot of people right now don't go as hard in fighting games because their thought is, you know, it's not sustainable. It's not something that I could, you know, get a return on investment by putting all my time into. If you start doing payouts like this, that perception is going to change entirely, right? Entirely. Suddenly there's going to be people like, you know what? If I'm actually really good at this, and this is something that I want to do, it can actually be worth my while. Because you showing up and getting out of pools at Capcom Cup, the biggest event of the year, 25K. That's real nice. That's real nice. And then as you start going further, 40K, 120K, right? And this is like, you know, 120K for 7th. That's going to make you feel like top 8 actually means something, right? But even if you don't, 40K is still really nice, right? 25 and 40 is still really nice. It's not 2K. It's not 5K. It's right. It's not like that. It's still really good money, right? And certainly, like, these are bigger payouts than you would get for winning a lot of other big tournaments, right? Right? You win EVO. I'm pretty sure EVO's payout for winning, I believe EVO's payout for winning was around 20 or 25K for Street Fighter this year, right? And that'll be the biggest it ever pretty much is, because the first year is always the biggest. It's 7K entrance, for God's sake, right? You get more than that for placing top 16 at Capcom Cup. That's a statement. That's a statement. That's telling people Street Fighter is here to stay, and you should devote your time to it if you care about it, right? That's that message that's sent. The only thing that's missing from Aiden's payout, and we talked about this as well, is that he didn't know about how the structure worked for people that didn't make it out of pools, so he doesn't have anything here. the biggest thing I could say is like, you definitely want to kick the people that don't make it out of pools a few $1,000s, just like I said, to make it feel like the trip is worth it. To make sure all their travel is covered, and you know, all their accommodations, that they don't go they don't go negative for traveling to Capcom Cup, right? It should feel like a privilege, right? Not like it's a curse. And so but yeah, so we talked about that, and we were like, yeah, just toss them a few $1,000 to make sure. And like, a lot of people are gonna be like, what do you mean toss them a few $1,000? Why are you saying it like it's not a big deal? Listen, bro, we're talking about a $2 million tournament. Capcom is a massive corporation. They can afford it. Do not worry about their pockets on this. Trust me. It's their crown jewel event of one of their flagship games. They can spare the expense here. Trust me. The difference to go to 2 million is not that much, just like it wouldn't be that much for them to pay a few $1,000s to the people that don't make it out of pools either. Even though it's 32 people, trust me, it's worth it as well. It's not insignificant, right? You think they should definitely do something like this for future seasons? Can't be mad at them doing 1 million to first for the inaugural SF6 season. No, I can be. I actually disagree. I disagree. I think we absolutely can be, because like I said, the difference in marketing is not a big deal, right? It's not a big deal. If I thought that it was going to be a big deal difference between handing the first person $1 million and handing them 500K, then I would agree with you. But honestly, an overwhelming majority of people, like 99.99999%, this does not impact, right? I guarantee you it's not affecting your viewership. It's not, right? They're going either way, right? They're watching either way. It doesn't make a big difference for them, right? All handing the first person $1 million does is make it so 58% of your prizing budget just goes to one person. And that leaves so much less to hand to the rest of the people. And these people matter too. They really do. I think everyone matters when you get to this point, and you need to treat them like such, right? I get it, but it's just not, I think that people should be upset about this, honestly. Especially if you're a competitor, you should be upset about this. Just because, like, the precedent, right? Like, that's what I'm saying. Like, what do you mean you place 5th and you get only 10K? Is that what it's worth? Going through all of that? You know how hard it is to get to 5th place? It's like, right? Like, the work required to even get to this point is like so incredibly high. You need to compensate them fairly for it. And so like that's what I'm saying. Like, I think it is fair to be upset with them, right? But yeah, you agree with you on the impact of the actual season. You think it made a huge difference in casuals talking about the game when it was announced? No. Like I said, if you say Capcom Cup is going to be a $2 million prize pool tournament, they're tuning in either way. It doesn't have to be someone getting handed $1 million. I promise. I promise. It doesn't. I don't think it would move the needle nearly as much as you think it does, because you still can market the same exact way, right? You can still say it's a multi-million-dollar tournament. You can do that. You can still do that. The only difference is you get to pay people fairly, right? And that matters. I don't know. I can't in good faith believe that it's like that significant of a difference that they had to go this route. I don't think they did, truthfully. Feel free to comment though. If you feel like it does, then feel free to leave a comment if you're watching on YouTube. Obviously, people in my chat are talking to me, but yeah. So this is where these are all like things. Like, I've talked about a lot of stuff during this talk. The overarching sentiments, like my closing remarks, right? First year of Capcom Pro Tour, right? It's very obvious that a lot of their attention was focused on marketing, which makes sense because it's the first year that the game is out. You're also focused on maximizing your sales, right? And doing this and that. And I'm not even just talking about the prize pool thing. I'm talking about, the DLC structure, the patch structure, the costumes, like all that stuff, right? All that stuff goes into, the place where marketing is most important. The early on is where marketing is always most important. And so that, I think a lot of these issues come from that fact, but I also don't think we should make excuses for them, right? They make these mistakes, which I do legitimately think they are mistakes. And while their focus may be on marketing, you can't sacrifice quality of life for the people that are choosing to actually buy and play and support your game. The people that are traveling to tournaments all over the world, devoting time, devoting resources, like really grinding. Like, you cannot drop the ball for them, right? Marketing is nice and all, but you really need to make sure that people that do actually support your game feel like they're taken care of, right? Big thing for Capcom. Season 2 is coming up. We don't know when. For the patch itself, like, obviously people are saying there's going to be some small changes coming with Ed, but you know, Akuma is still not there. I assume what's probably going to happen is Ed's going to come out. There's going to be a very small set of changes for it, and then there'll be bigger changes released with Akuma, probably. Maybe that's the way that they're going to do, but I think they're going to do, like, they're going to make it like a big deal, like Season 2 of Street Fighter 6. And with that, we will get to see how they change their approach to Capcom Pro Tour, to the patch philosophy, to DLC release. Like, all that stuff is going to change. And they said that one of the things that they did say whenever they said there was not going to be any content announcements or anything, they did say that there were going to be esports announcements. So we are going to wait and see where it goes with that. Right, we're gonna be tuned in and see like what they have, and I'm gonna be really paying attention heavily as to what changes they make. They cannot afford to mess this up 2 years in a row. They cannot, right? They cannot mess this up. If they mess up the second season, you're going to really kill your momentum, like, in a big way. And I'm not one of those people that is like a doomsayer. It's like, oh my god, Street Fighter is gonna die. I don't think that's the issue here, right? The issue is that the people that really love and care about your game and want to be the best at it don't feel like they're being treated fairly, and to them it's not as worth it to take it seriously, right? And so they start considering to go to other games, right? And go to other companies and right? And there's big competition on the horizon. Project L just announced news that game's coming out next year. There's going to be tests for it this year. You're going to have competition. You already do, right? You already do have competition. You're going to have even more coming down the pipe. You can't afford to make mistakes like this. Tekken, right? Huge right now. Viewership wise, the World Tour is done in a lot better way. Like, you have competition and it only continues to stack up. You cannot make the same mistake twice, right? You had an opportunity to really nail it when there wasn't that much brewing, because Street Fighter was first before the others, right? They had an opportunity to get out ahead of the competition and really kill it. They didn't do that. So now the follow-up has to be really strong. So that's where we're at on Capcom Pro Tour. If you enjoyed this talk, like I said, leave a like, leave a comment. Let me know what you think. We will continue monitoring, and hopefully we get some good news at the end of this weekend. But for those of you tuning in on YouTube, this is going to be it. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it. We'll see you next time.